The magazine is sitting on my passenger seat, my own face staring back at me from the cover. I should go inside. I've been parked in front of my parents' house for 11 minutes now, engine off, hands in my lap, watching the kitchen light glow yellow through the curtains the way it always has. My father is in there, his friends are in there, and somewhere inside that house, the version of me he decided I was at age 14 is still pinned to the wall like a dead butterfly. I grab the magazine. I get out of the car. This is not a revenge story. Or maybe it is. I haven't decided yet. I was 14 the first time my father told me I had no future in a kitchen. We were making dinner. Or rather, I was making dinner while my mother set the table and my father sat at the island with a glass of bourbon, watching me the way he watched the evening news. Like something mildly irritating that he couldn't turn off. I had spent 2 hours after school that day experimenting with a brown butter sauce I'd seen in a library book. I had reduced it 3 times, tasted it obsessively, added a pinch of thyme that wasn't in the recipe because something told me I needed it. When I spooned it over the chicken and slid the plate in front of him, I was practically vibrating. He cut a piece, chewed, and set his fork down. "It's fine," he said, "but cooking isn't a career, Claire, it's a hobby. Your brother is going to be a doctor. What are you going to be?" My brother looked up from his phone just long enough to smirk. I was 14. I didn't have an answer. So I said nothing, and I cleared the plates and I washed the pan with the last of the brown butter still crusted inside it, and I told myself that someday I would make that exact sauce in a restaurant that had my name on the door. That was the first time. It was not the last. For the next 4 years, the conversation repeated itself in different forms. My father had a talent for consistency. When I entered a regional cooking competition at 16 and came in second place, he asked why I hadn't entered the science fair instead. When I filled out college applications my senior year and circled the Culinary Institute of America as my first choice, he sat me down at the kitchen table with the energy of a man delivering a terminal diagnosis and explained, carefully and without raising his voice, that he would not be paying for me to spend 4 years learning to make food that people forgot about the moment they swallowed it. "Your brother is finishing his 2nd year of pre-med," he said. "He has a path. What you're describing is not a path. It's a detour." My mother was standing at the sink. She didn't turn around. "I got into the CIA. I deferred for a year because I had no money, and I spent that year working double shifts at a catering company and a breakfast diner on Route 9, saving everything. I told myself I just needed time. I told myself things would work out. What I didn't know was that my aunt had been watching. She called me one Sunday in February, 8 months into my gap year. She was my father's older sister. Practical and plain-spoken. A woman who had run a small alteration shop for 30 years and had opinions about everything. She asked me how much I had saved. I told her. There was a pause. "How much do you still need for the first semester?" I gave her the number. Another pause. "I'm going to send you a check," she said. $8,000. You don't have to pay it back right away, but I want you to call me every month and tell me something you learned." I started crying in my car in the parking lot of the diner. She told me to stop being dramatic and to cash the check before she changed her mind. She was joking, I think. I want to be very clear about something because it matters. I paid my aunt back every dollar plus another $3,000 because she refused actual interest, but I was not going to pretend that money had no value. I paid her back the month my restaurant turned its first real profit, 14 months after we opened. I transferred the money on a Tuesday morning and then I sat at my prep table and cried for the second time in my life over money, except this time, it felt like setting something free. My father never knew she helped me. That was her choice, not mine. She said she didn't do it to make a point to him. She did it because she could see what I was. The CIA was the first place I had ever felt completely fluent. I don't know how else to describe it. There are people who walk into a room and understand immediately how everything in it works. The politics, the dynamics, who wants what from whom. I have never been one of those people. But put me in a kitchen and something different happens. The noise settles, the sequence becomes obvious. I know what goes in the pan first. What needs more acid, what wants salt, and what wants heat, and what just wants to be left alone. I have always known these things the way other people know how to breathe. I graduated in the top of my class. I staged at 2 restaurants in New York, one of them with a name that made my fellow graduates go quiet when I mentioned it. I worked 18-hour days and shared a 400-square-foot apartment in Queens with 2 other cooks, and I ate standing up over the sink most nights, and I was, without question, the happiest I had ever been. My father called me twice a year, Christmas and my birthday. The conversations lasted approximately 7 minutes each. He asked how things were going. I said fine. He mentioned my brother's residency, his new car, a conference he'd been invited to speak at. I said that's great. We said goodbye. My mother called more often. She never asked about the restaurant directly. She asked if I was eating enough, sleeping enough, if I had a warm coat for winter. Once, near the end of a call, she said quietly, "I think about your brown butter chicken sometimes." That was something special. And then she moved on before I could respond, and I stood in my walk-in cooler holding my phone until the cold made my fingers numb. I opened Sable 3 days after my 28th birthday. The name was my aunt's idea. It means dark or black in French, a color that contains everything and gives nothing away until the light hits it right. She came to the soft opening and sat at the bar and ate everything I sent out and didn't say a word until the very end, when she put her hand over mine and said, "There you go." Sable seated 42. We had 11 reservations the first week and 38 by the end of the month. By the 6-month mark, we had a wait list. By the end of the first year, a critic from a publication I had read since culinary school came in on a Thursday night and sat in the corner booth and ordered 7 courses, and I didn't find out until 2 weeks later when the review ran. She called my food quietly devastating. I put the review in a frame and hung it in my office where only I could see it. The second year, things accelerated in a way that I still find difficult to explain without sounding like I'm bragging, which I was raised to avoid. Revenue doubled. I was approached about a second location. A cookbook editor reached out. I hired a small front-of-house team that I trusted with my life and a sous chef named Devin, who had more talent in his left hand than most people develop in a career. I did not tell my family any of this. I told my aunt everything. Every month, as promised, I called her, and even after I paid her back, I kept calling, because by then it had nothing to do with money. She knew about the wait list in the second location, and the night a James Beard committee member came in and I had to excuse myself to the walk-in to breathe into my hands for 90 seconds before I could cook again. When I told her about the Food and Wine nomination, she was quiet for a long moment. "Best new chef," she said. "It's just a nomination." "Claire." "I know. Does your father know?" I was quiet. "He will," she said, and her voice had something in it I couldn't quite name. Not satisfaction. Something gentler than that, more patient. The Food and Wine feature ran in October. I was on the cover. They photographed me in my kitchen, in my whites, standing at my prep station with both hands flat on the stainless steel and looking directly at the camera. The art director said she wanted something that conveyed authority. I told her I'd been standing like that since I was 15. She laughed. I wasn't entirely joking. The article was 4 pages. It talked about Sable, about my trajectory, about the brown butter sauce technique I'd been refining since I was a teenager. I told that story in the interview because it was true, and because I was done being embarrassed by how long I had wanted this. The writer described me as one of the most precise and instinctive culinary minds to emerge from the American independent restaurant scene in a decade. I read that line approximately 40 times. I had the magazine in my car. I was not planning to show it to anyone at my parents' house that evening. My mother had called the week before to say my father was having some of his colleagues over for dinner, and she hoped I could come. It would mean a lot. She'd made the pot roast I liked. I said yes because my mother asked me, and I have never been able to say no to her when her voice sounds like that. Tired and careful and hoping. I did not tell her about the cover. I did not tell my father anything. I drove the 3 hours from the city with the magazine on my passenger seat and the specific, controlled calm of someone who has made peace with whatever is about to happen. There were 6 people in the living room when I arrived. My father's 2 oldest friends, both retired now, both with the handshake-heavy energy of men who had spent decades being important in rooms. Their wives. A younger colleague of my father's whose name I didn't catch. My brother, who had driven in from his practice upstate and greeted me in the hallway with the slightly stiff warmth he'd been offering since we were adults. Not unkind, but measured. Like everything between us had to be weighed before it was given. My mother hugged me in the kitchen and held on for a beat longer than usual. She smelled like pot roast and the same soap she'd used my entire life. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine. You look good tired." She touched my face briefly. "I'm glad you came." Dinner was loud and easy in the way that gatherings with people who've known each other for 30 years tend to be. Stories that everyone already knows, retold with slight variations. References I followed and some I didn't. My brother talked about his practice, a difficult case, a paper he was co-authoring. My father glowed the way he always did when my brother was in the room. It was not malicious. I understood that now, or I was trying to. Some people have a particular frequency that they're tuned to, and everyone else is just static. I ate my mother's pot roast. I answered questions politely. I helped clear the plates. I had put the magazine in my bag. I don't know exactly why. I hadn't planned to take it out. It was my father's friend, the older one, the one who had known him since college, who changed everything, and he did it completely by accident. He had pulled out his phone after dinner the way people do, scrolling while the conversation moved around him, and then he went still, the way people go still when something has surprised them. "Marcus," he said to my father, "is this your daughter?" My father looked over. Something in his face shifted, confused, then cautious. "Where?" His friend turned the phone around. He had pulled up the Food and Wine piece online, the cover image first. Me, in my kitchen, hands flat on the steel, looking straight ahead. The room got quiet. My father took the phone. He looked at it for a long time. "Claire," he said, and he said it the way you say the name of something you're still working out the shape of. Everyone was looking at me. My mother had her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. My brother was very still. "I was going to mention it," I said, and then, because that wasn't quite honest, I didn't know how. My father's friend took his phone back and started reading the article out loud, just the opening, just the first paragraph, which described Sable and its waitlist and the nomination, and then the line about being one of the most precise culinary minds of the decade. His voice was warm and loud, the voice of a man who was genuinely delighted. My father said nothing. The conversation moved around him. His friends asking questions, my brother asking questions, my mother getting up to refill coffee with the careful neutrality of a woman who had been managing this room for 40 years. I answered everything. I talked about Sable, about how it started, about the second location, about the James Beard process. I talked like someone who had been holding their breath for 6 years and had finally surfaced. At some point, I looked at my father. He was looking at the magazine. Someone had produced the physical copy. I still don't know how it materialized, whether someone brought it in from my bag without asking, or whether it had been sitting on the entry table all along. He was holding it with both hands, looking at the cover, and his face had an expression I had never seen on him before. Not pride, not exactly. Something quieter. Something that looked like recognition arriving very late. The guests left around 10. My brother helped my mother with the last of the dishes and then said his goodbyes. He had an early surgery and hugged me in a way that was less measured than usual, one arm around my shoulders, a brief pressure. He didn't say anything that needed to be said out loud. Sometimes my brother and I communicate in the white space between sentences. We always have. I was putting on my coat in the hallway when my father came in from the living room. "Do you have to leave right now?" he said. I looked at him. "I have a long drive," he nodded. He put his hands in his pockets. He was wearing the same cardigan he'd had since I was in high school. Dark green, slightly frayed at one cuff. "That article," he said. "The way she described your food." "Yeah, I didn't know." He paused. "I mean, I knew you had the restaurant. Your mother told me things. But I didn't have the full picture." I held my coat in my hands. I thought about 14-year-old me scrubbing the brown butter pan. I thought about my aunt's voice on the phone in the diner parking lot. I thought about the walk-in cooler and 90 seconds of breathing into my hands. "You didn't ask for it," I said, not unkindly, just accurately. He absorbed that. He was quiet for a moment that stretched long enough to become something. "I was wrong," he said finally. "About what you were building. About what you were capable of." He looked at me directly and there was something effortful about it, like a man picking up something heavier than he expected. "I said things when you were young that I should not have said. I was operating on assumptions that I should have examined. I didn't. I have imagined versions of this conversation many times over many years. In some of them I had speeches ready. In some of them I walked away. In some of them I cried or he cried or we both did. What I didn't anticipate was how quiet the real version would be. How ordinary. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry, Claire, I put my coat on. I thought about what I wanted to give to this moment and what I wanted to keep for myself." "I'm not ready to act like it didn't happen," I said. "I need you to understand that. What you said about me for years, it cost me something. I carried it. I'm still carrying some of it, I know. But I don't want to carry it forever." I picked up my bag. "So, we'll see." My father nodded. He looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I just hadn't looked closely in a long time. My mother appeared at the end of the hallway, dish towel in hand. She had the expression of someone who had been listening from the kitchen and had the grace to pretend otherwise. "Drive safe," she said. I hugged her. I held on. "I want to tell you something," I said quietly, against her shoulder. "Okay. I paid Aunt Ruth back. The $8,000. A couple years ago. I paid it back and then some." My mother pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes were doing something complicated. "She told me not to tell you," I said, "but I'm telling you anyway because I think you should know that the people who believed in me, I didn't forget them. I haven't forgotten." She touched my face again, the same way she had in the kitchen at the beginning of the night. "I know you haven't," she said. I drove home in the dark with the magazine still on the passenger seat and the windows down despite the cold and something in my chest that had been knotted for a very long time finally, incrementally beginning to loosen. That was 8 months ago. Things between my father and me are not fixed. I want to be honest about that because stories like mine are often told as if an apology closes everything, as if acknowledgement is the same as repair. It isn't. We are in the early, careful stages of something that might become functional and might become more than that. We talk more than we used to. He asks questions now, real ones, not courtesy questions. He asked me last month to walk him through what a typical service night looks like at Sable. I spent 20 minutes explaining it. He listened the entire time without looking at his phone. My brother and I have also been talking more. There was a conversation we needed to have about the years we spent as each other's competition without ever choosing to be, and we had it, imperfectly, over the phone on a Tuesday night when we were both tired. We'll have it again, probably. The good ones take multiple drafts. The second Sable location opened in March. We were fully booked the first 3 weeks. Devin is running the original kitchen now, which I was terrified about and which he is handling with the same quiet competence he handles everything. My aunt came to the opening night of the new location and sat at the chef's table and worked her way through every course with the focused attention of someone conducting a very serious evaluation. At the end of the night, she sat back in her chair and looked at me. "Call me Sunday," she said. "I want to hear everything." "I always call you Sunday." "I know," she smiled. "I like hearing you say it." I am 31 years old. I have a restaurant with my name on the door and another one that will have it soon. I have a kitchen that I understand the way I have never understood anything else, and people who trust me to feed them, and a sous chef who pushes back when I'm wrong, and a small office where I keep a framed review and a photograph of my aunt from the first opening night, laughing at something off camera. I still make brown butter sauce. I have made it several thousand times since I was 14 and tasted it standing at my parents' stove with my heart in my throat. I have refined it and simplified it and taken it apart and rebuilt it, and it is on the Sable menu now, overduck, with a time-forward compound butter that one reviewer called startling in its precision. My father ate it when he came for dinner last fall. I watched him from the pass. He didn't say anything for a moment. And then he picked up his fork and finished every last bit of it, and that was its own kind of answer, and I decided it was enough. Not everything, but enough.